Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Badger Pack Sports. Going to be talking some Badgers football, a little bit of Badger basketball. So happy to have everyone here for this show. Joined as always by my co-host Justin Legal. Justin, how's it going?
Good man. Talking some Badger basketball later in the show, but Badger football a little, divided on the fan base. Talking about in-state recruit Gavin Meyer going to
Yep.
our beloved rivals Minnesota. So I think we have a little bit to share on there. And I guess is that where you want to start, Robbie?
Yep, nope, absolutely. Starting with Gavin Meyer, a 6'6", 295-pound tackle, according to 247 Sports there, coming out of Janesville. Pretty good size. The Badgers were definitely interested in him. I was reading an article on Jesse Temple. They were definitely looking to get him. Ryan Herrings from Lockdown Badgers, did confirm that the Badgers were interested in him as well. So just kind of one of those things where you see a kid commit to a rival school in Minnesota, and it's like it kind of hurts. What do you think, Justin?
Yeah, it definitely hurts a bit. I mean, at one point, I believe Evan Flood had him crystal ball to Wisconsin, so it almost felt like not a lock, but in-state recruiting historically has been a little less resource intensive, where we can kind of rely on getting guys in state, and it definitely hurts, especially going to a school like Minnesota. I think there's you can go two routes. There's a big picture view of it, or in a short term view of it, and of course in the short term. And there are some articles of why Gavin picked the Gophers, and Gavin talked about saying how this isn't the Barry Alvarez Wisconsin Badgers anymore. Um, that hurts to hear, but it's the truth. Like the last two seasons have been disappointing in the Fickle era, and I think our in-state relationships and recruiting have definitely taken a hit.
Yeah, no, I agree. It definitely hurts, but I mean, I think we both kind of talked before the show. It's like we've been encouraged by the two classes before this. I mean, you're bringing in quality linemen, and you've brought in five the past couple classes, and it's like, it's tough sledding if Gavin Myers were to, join the room because there's a lot of top end talent, and it's like I think a couple of years ago there was some Wisconsin offensive line bias where these guys were getting rated as 5 stars, and I just don't think that they were actually deserving of all of it. And so it's like I think that's kind of come down a little bit. And so it's like, I mean, the staff has gone and they've looked into other states, and they're just trying to get the best talent available. So I think that's a big thing for them right now.
Yeah, and I think Gavin Meyer probably got some counsel to, looking at the Badgers depth chart. I think it'd be safe to say he'd be pretty buried coming to Wisconsin. And we've really recruited well in the last few cycles under Fickle and Coach Blazik. They've done a really nice job identifying talent. And not to say Gavin Meyer wouldn't have had a chance at Wisconsin, but, I was talking to one of my buddies, Jason Adlam, shout out to you, as, Gopher fan. I kind of wanted to get his thoughts on it. And he's telling me that the Gophers program as a whole seemed to have a bigger need at the offensive line. And I'm wondering if that kind of sold Gavin, potentially some earlier playing time perhaps in the program. It'd be interesting to see. And obviously in this transfer portal era, and even in this NIL era, I mean, it's March, almost April. I guess it turns April tomorrow. A lot can change between now and signing day. We've seen it a lot where kids will commit to a school like Booker did with UCLA at tight end, and then we ended
Yeah.
up bringing him in. And that's one of many. So I would say it's not a complete loss right now, but it might be a wake up call to the football program to maybe buckle in or in-state recruiting a little bit better. But any other part too is Gavin isn't really a blue chip prospect. We've had
No.
he's a high 3-star kid, definitely has potential. But I mean, if we were losing him to as a 4-star, mid 4-star guy, that would definitely hurt more. But I would say it's I would say some yellow flags are being raised at the moment. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is kind of one of those things where it's like I know PJ Fleck, he likes to put pressure on his recruits there to get him to sign early. And then two, I think like it is just hard because it's like, it's like you do want those Wisconsin guys that you think are going to stay, but if he's already committing to Minnesota, like would he be the guy who's really going to stick around there? Like you get, I don't know, I think of like, just fresh in the mind and different sport, but Carter Gilmore, like somebody who's willing to stay there and develop because he loves Wisconsin. Like that's the type of guy you want, like on the bench. Like, yeah, he's a little bit lower rated, but hey, he loves Wisconsin. Let's bring him in. And if that's not going to be him, if you're not going to be the team player, then good luck in Minnesota.
Well, and that's kind of the debate right now, right? I mean, I know Ryan Herring's with Locked On Badgers has talked a little bit about this. It's like some of our best Badger programs, perhaps the stars on the team weren't from Wisconsin, but those guys behind the scene, the glue guys, a lot of them
Yep.
are from the state. It's like they bleed red and white, and they want to fight for that W on the helmet. And it's kind of an experiment we're doing now. You feel is like if you look at our recruiting, our out of state recruiting has been tremendous, better than probably it's ever
Yep.
been. And I'm curious to see as that kind of matriculates to the program. Will we see some impacts from that? And I know we have a strong walk on program where we tend to bring in some in-state talent, and the transfer portal has also opened up, kids that maybe we overlooked or didn't look at, going into smaller colleges, universities, and then we bring them in later on. It's going to be an interesting mix. And Wisconsin's a tradition-rich program. We're not an Ohio State where we pluck kids from California, Florida, New York, wherever we can get them. It's like we're a Midwest, Wisconsin heavy state where we bring kids in. And I'm wondering with this model that we're in, are we going to see impacts from that? And it's way too early to tell, but it's something worth noting and looking for.
Yeah, no, I think you can definitely tell they've switched things up. Obviously, winning solves a lot. So if they can start winning, that's going to be the biggest thing. It's like you get a winning season, you get a winning mentality and culture. So a lot can change, and so it'll definitely be interesting to see what they do this year. I think switching to a team that had some success this year in the Badger basketball team, interesting to see Daniel Freitag transfer from the basketball team think. And then Cam Hunter, I think we all kind of saw that one coming. That one makes sense. But the free tag one is big at coming off a successful season. What do you think there?
Yeah, I mean, he was a four-star kid that we really coveted out of high school, up in Minnesota. Um, Dual sport athlete in high school, big football prospect as well. He was getting looks even by our own football program too, along with other schools. And I know he kind of came in with some injury concern too from the football, from his senior year of football. So I'm curious to know how that impacted his development, under Greg Gard in the system. It's hard to tell. I think if you look at it, it hurts from trying to build the program up from high school recruiting point of view. But if you're not a fit, you're not a fit. And obviously, in the transfer portal era we're in now, players are more empowered than ever to get up and go. And I feel like too, just my speculation. I have no inside sources to the team, but my speculation is I feel like he was kind of ushered out the door. You can kind of
Yep.
tell he didn't get a lot of opportunities. He barely got playing time even in blowouts. Um, you definitely noticed he didn't even travel with the team for some games. Very very far down on the bench. But I guess that's my initial thoughts. But I don't know, Robbie, where your head is at with the free tag situation.
Yeah, I think just kind of you look at the whole Gus Yalden people last year, were like, oh, he's just red shirting. I think red shirts in basketball are basically gone. It is just kind of what it feels like. Like unless it's a lower tier guy that kind of knew he wasn't going to play right away. It seems like if you're a top talent and you're not playing right away, you're transferring. And in the same token, these teams know that hey, if we can't use you, we're going to the transfer portal to find somebody who can. And even if hey, we might be able to develop you, we're still going to put somebody in front of you until you show us that you can do something. And maybe he just doesn't want that. Maybe he goes a little bit lower, make sure he gets starting time, able to develop, and then he can transfer again because it is the wild, wild west of the transfer era. Just keep switching until you find a good spot for yourself.
Yeah, and I think there's probably some people in the free tag camp, people like in the fan base that are defending him, and I'm not here to bash on a kid, obviously
Absolutely not.
not here to bash on him, but I will say it's kind of telling to show you where he fits in Guard's system. Guard is not afraid to play freshmen, and we talked about this too, Robbie, and Winter and Blackwell both played significant roles as
Yep.
freshmen. Connor Seaton even played significant roles as a freshman, even though he's out in Nebraska now. But the point being is, if you're showing out in practice and if you're doing what you need to do, you're going to get playing time. So this whole, I know, like under the Bo Ryan regime, it was freshmen really very rarely played, but I think Guard has kind of changed his that tune a bit, and the fact that the fan base a lot was wondering where free tag was. That was kind of like
Yep.
a common question every game. Was like, when are we going to see free tag? And we didn't get to see a whole lot of them. And the limited action he got, he did not look confident. He looked timid, and I think the confidence is maybe shot a little bit. And sometimes it's best for both parties to part ways.
Yep.
Um, and just a little rant too. It's like there's a lot of chat of like how what's the state of the recruiting, and is this a trend? Because with what happened to Gus Yalden leaving the program and now Freitag, I want to remind people Nolan Winter and John Blackwell were also recruits of guard, and those
Yep.
guys are doing just fine. I just think it's the era we're in now. Where I think Freitag, if we're back in the pre NIL days, I think he'd be a solid guy his junior senior year if he spent
Yep.
time in the program and develop instead of this pressure that he's feeling to make a decision now as a true sophomore. Stay in the program and develop, or do you take a chance and get paid elsewhere and try to become a star overnight, for a better lack of term.
Yeah, no, it's definitely an interesting time. And like you said, even with the Myers thing too, and like all these transfers, I always wish these kids the best. I mean, they're doing the best for themselves. I think, people leave jobs all the time. And it's like they're getting the most money they can. That is the landscape that is out there right now. So they're trying to take advantage of that. So I can't be mad. But like I said, it's just we're gonna keep looking. It's like it stinks because I know there's a lot of hype around Daniel Freitag and what he could do, but it's like maybe he doesn't fit this new offense either. Maybe there is a little bit, like you said, he got ushered out. Maybe they just think that now that they brought him in, it's like, yeah, it's not going to work out. So,
Yeah,
or
and with
at least a
both,
mutual parting.
yeah, and I guess we sprinkled a little bit of Cam Hunter in there, and I guess for him, it was a solid transfer he brought in last year. Spent most of the year actually injured. I believe he had an
Yep.
ankle concern, something with his foot or ankle. The moments he got into, very similar to Freitag, honestly, very frantic minutes, very nerve wracking. Um, it just didn't look right. You just saw it. You're like, he does not look comfortable out there. So I think that was a name to we all were kind of expecting. And I'm curious now. Those are two guards that we've lost into the portal. It makes you wonder. In the priority meter, how high that guard position is because like we talked about in our last Badger basketball episode. I personally think for this team to take a step up, you need a true point guard starting. Get John Blackwell back to playing the two and have a true point guard, command the offense and do things as a ball handler that Blackwell just isn't skilled with. We want Blackwell to be a playmaker with slashing and shooting and getting to the paint, not so much breaking presses and trying to facilitate offense. Though he can do it, I think for us to get to that next step as a program, we need to have somebody there at the one. And I almost want to tweak my priority now. I feel like getting a true one is almost number one with a rim protector
Yep.
very close behind still. And as we sit today at March 31st, still no names that have signed.
Yep.
We've been tied. There's been a lot of names we're tied to, and we're not going to spend our time talking about them because I think
I was
last year
just
John Tonje came out of left field. No one talked about him, so I
Yep.
don't know if it's worth our breath, but
I was gonna say we'll do a show once they start signing them, but unfortunately,
exactly.
haven't seen anything yet.
Yeah, one name I like, Elliot Cadeau, who I really liked as a point guard in North Carolina, did just sign with Michigan earlier today, which that was a little bummer.
Yeah,
He was going to be
bummer.
a pricier guy anyways, coming from North Carolina as a stud. But I'm curious to see, and we can speculate all day. I just wonder, are we going to go big game hunting, or are we going to try, the Aldi bargain special, which we've kind of done the last few years? I just
Man,
wonder when the luck will
all
run
the
out.
bargain special. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
You know.
right. Not the name brands, but it tastes 80% of the name brand. We'll take 80%. But we'll have to see, do this new offense that we've done with Kirk Penny,
Yeah.
is that going to lure some recruits, or we should say transfer portal candidates, let's
Yep.
call them, to come to Wisconsin? You got AJ Storr as a success story. You got John Tonje as an obvious success story as a second team All American. Can that bring in guys with some higher pedigree to our program? We'll have to
Yeah.
see. I'm really excited for this.
I was gonna say my personal opinion is there needs to be one more year of it. I think it's if you do it once, okay, it's like you can kind of hit a hot streak. It's like, okay, guard changed it for 1 year. People weren't ready for it. Our team's going to be able to adjust what they do next year. Now, if guard's able to be successful with the guys he's able to bring in, it's like I think one, you'll see an uptick in recruiting next year, and then the portal hits should be bigger. But no, so definitely going to be interesting to see what happens next year with the Greg Guard team. I would definitely say keep tuned in here. We're going to be talking about any guys who sign with the Badgers as far as basketball, football, we are going to be on top of it. So be sure to hit that subscribe button so you can watch all our videos on that. In the meantime, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.